Welcome to the With You Rugby podcast, designed to give you an in-depth look at the United States Rugby Foundation, including our grant programs and recipients, fundraisers, events, and much more. Now let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Vizard, president of the United States Rugby Foundation, and I want to welcome you to another of our With You Rugby podcast. And as we get closer to our 2024 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame induction ceremony presented by Major League Rugby, which will take place at the historic Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, July 13th, we thought it'd be great to get to know this year's Hall of Fame inductees and special award recipients just a little bit better. And today we get to welcome in Gentlemen of Aspen legend, a USA 15 star for many, many years, and a 2024 U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Alec Parker. Welcome, Alec. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet, brother. Thanks for having me.
And so where are you talking to us from? Is this your home here, your home office?
This is actually, it's my wife's office, but this is where the magic happens, brother.
All right, fantastic. Hey, Alec, as we do with all our guests, we want to know a little bit about your upbringing. So where'd you grow up? What sports did you play as a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in Snowmass, Colorado. Well, they call it Old Snowmass now, but on a ranch about 18 miles from Aspen, but only one hill away. And so we, my mom and dad took care of this ranch for the owners, the Christensens, which we ran their sheep and took care of their property, and they let us stay there. And that's kind of how families survived up here in the resort town. You know, you found a spot and did something you were good at. And so I grew up on a ranch, and sports wise, I didn't play any sports until I want to say 7th grade. I tried football, but the school I was going to didn't have football. So I had to travel, catch a bus to go to Aspen Middle School. And that would have been my first go at sports. And it was it's interesting playing for Aspen High School. We didn't win a lot, and there wasn't a whole lot of guys. You know, you played both ways. In fact, I played a lot of spots: center, guard, tight end. I played fullback a couple times, punter, kicker, and I guess the only thing I didn't do was wide receiver. Maybe not quite fast enough to be out on the edge, but that was that was it. As soon as I got to high school is when I figured out I was going to be all right at sports. I got to play basketball. I did track 1 year. That was interesting. Mostly just shot put and high jump. Okay at the discus, not great. Tried baseball once, was terrible at baseball, so gave that up right away. But this sports wise, it was mainly just high school is when I figured out it was better than just going to school, you know.
No skiing?
I didn't learn how to ski very well either. We skied on the weekends, and it was cheap. I think it was Aspen Highlands was private back then, so it was $50 for the year, the student pass, and then the other 3 mountains were $5 to ski at. So yeah, we skied on the weekends if you weren't in playing sports, but I never really got that into it. I mean, a great time, but it wasn't my gig.
Yeah. Well, after high school, you attended Mesa State College. You played tight end on the football team there. You had good hands on the lineout. So is it safe to say you're a pretty good tight end?
I guess it's safe to say. Oddly enough, I didn't get redshirted. The head coach there, Toronto, he saw me play basketball. Is how I got a full ride to Mesa playing football. Is he reffed a game that Aspen played in Hotchkiss for the regionals. It was the best that Aspen had done in basketball in like 17 years. I think that team we had. And so the head football coach of Mesa said, "Hey, come play football." everything's paid for. And so I was super excited about, I didn't think I was going to go to college, honestly. And so to get a full ride, and obviously Mesa's a small school. It wasn't you're not talking great college football, but it was, again, having to attend school, for me, without a sport would have been brutal. Not, going all class and no play would have been bad for me. But yes, I showed up as a freshman and ended up starting a few games, and it was working out pretty well. I was light, I was small, but I put on, like, in those first 2 years, like 55 pounds. I showed up at 190, and my sophomore year, the end of my sophomore year, it was 245. So I was really excited about the football path.
Yeah, but it was on one of those summer breaks from Mesa State that you got introduced to rugby. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah, so that's where it all changed.
Yeah.
So I think you go home, you got to make some money, and I ended up working for the temp agency, and it turns out so did like 95% of the Aspen's rugby team was on the temp. And I had pretty good size, and I was getting fast, and I think just working with these guys, they were like, you got to come play rugby. And I kept saying, no way. I mean, I remember seeing it at Wagner when I was a kid going, what is wrong with these guys? Like, this is absurd. Half the team's bleeding and injured. And I was like, there's no way I'm playing rugby. But somehow they convinced me that it was going to be a good way to stay in shape for football. And that was one thing I always had, is I didn't want to be a weak link or come back out of shape. And so they convinced me to come out. And I think it was I went to 2 practices, and they took me to a sevens game in Vail. And sevens, not knowing anything about rugby, it was an immediate, like, this is awesome because there's so much room. And like I said, I wasn't slow, and it was great to have this open field kind of atmosphere.
And you weren't small.
And I kind of fell in love with it that day, except I didn't know a single rule. They should have, some of the guys should have let me know that there was rules beyond, when the ball goes out, it starts over. And I think one of my first run-ins with the refs was, made a tackle, and it was a penalty of some kind. I don't know what I did wrong, but he jumped up, tapped the ball, and started running. So I just tackled him right away again. And that happened like 3 times in a row. And the ref stopped the game and said, what the hell are you doing? And I said, I really don't know. You guys got to tell me what I'm doing wrong here. And they finally said, well, you got to get back. You got to get back 10 meters now. And so I think it was, trial by fire. And, that first weekend was a blast. And the friendships, it was kind of all fell into place. And so, yeah, that first summer was a memorable one for sure.
So once you got introduced to rugby, was that the end of your football career, or did you keep playing?
What happened is within that first summer, I was doing well enough, and I think, that Mark Williams was on the U.S. team at that time and said, man, this kid's got something. And I'm, pretty sure it was put a good word in for me and got me to a training camp that the U.S. was having in Berkeley. And at that time, Luke Gross had just started playing. I think he had 2 or 3 caps by then, and Cliff Vogel was the other lock. And they made me look small. And I was like, wow, I have no chance at this with these guys. But I could catch kickoffs, and maybe made a good enough impression that they kept my phone number because they sent me straight into Aspen was having a game down in Texas. So I flew straight down there for that and just assumed that was the end of it. But by the end of that summer, I believe Cliff decided to call it quits with the U.S. And Jack basically called up and said, "Hey, you want to go to Japan?" And that's right before two-a-days was supposed to happen for football, and it was kind of one of those, man, is this happening? I can't believe it. So I called my mom and I said, "Hey, I either got to go back to college, or it seems like I'm going to be playing for the U.S. if I say yeah." And so that's what I did at the time. The U.S. was, I want to say it was $6,500, and you had to be available 111 days was the first contract he offered. And I had just bought a new truck, and it covered my truck payment. And I said, okay, 6,500, my truck paid for the year, and off we went.
Oh, good. Well, we're gonna get to the your U.S. career, but let's talk about Aspen first. So you joined Gentlemen of Aspen. Were they already into their championship run, or were you kind of one of the missing links when you got on board?
Yeah, so I had to call a couple guys to figure out when all this went down, and it was, I think it was in maybe the infant stages of the, hey, do we want to shoot for national titles, national championship? And they went to they called it the Five Nations in '95, which I missed out. I didn't know any of those guys at the time. And so when I started playing '96, we were starting to clean up the Mountain League. It was that you could get the feeling that the ski towns didn't want to play Aspen anymore because it was getting kind of absurd. We were becoming pretty good, and I mean there was some healthy defeats where it just must not have been fun for the other team.
Right.
But there was some taunting. I remember some taunting going on. Well, you'd never do it in a D1 or a national run. You know that you guys wouldn't make it. And so there was this like, should we take a chance at this? And I remember Salty being a big part of that whole decision and trying to get us from the Mountain League to a D1. And then, you know, the rules that follow, the foreigner rule, you can only have a certain amount, and people were like, you guys are never going to make it because we didn't have enough Americans type deal. And it was like we put a team together and gave it a good run that first year. I think we lost to Homback up in Chicago, I want to say. Yeah. And then we didn't do very much losing after that.
Right.
But it must have happened right around then. I don't know if I was the missing piece, but there was a great team. Obviously, they decided to go to Europe and travel around, and so just to be a part of that beginning decision to start running in the D1 leagues and then later on Super League.
Right. Who are some of your mentors when you first started with Aspen? Who are some of your mentors on that gentleman team?
Oh man, you'd have to give, for me, Jason Walker just was one of the hardest men I had. I was a young kid, and just the way he played, the way he held himself, he had to be one of the upper guys. Obviously the Liqueur brothers, but you know, you can't go without saying what kind of influence Bob had on me, and obviously Crack, just you know, being our enforcer for Aspen. Like nobody messed with Crack, and then you had guys like Mark Williams that were on the U.S. team, and you look at out on the wing, Brian Hightower. All these guys played a big role in knowing that, man, I'm a part of something great, you know.
Now you were on some great Aspen teams, as you talked about, on their run of winning 7 national club or rugby Super League titles. Is there one or two of those championship that stand out in your mind?
Man, they're all, well, one, I have a hard time remembering a lot of that. It's kind of all one big memory, but and I wouldn't know what year, but I know that our coach Brian Going, we had to we had to play against his brother's team, Ken's, I think it was Golden Gate, for the championship, I believe. And so I remember the guys, especially the New Zealander guys, were making a big deal out of these two brothers, and not knowing a whole lot about this is all brand new to me, but not realizing 100% who the goings were at that time. And I guess finally grasping that this is like one of the major rugby families in New Zealand, and I'm being coached by one of them, and we have to play against the other brother's team. That had to be one of them. And then there was a game later on, I believe it was against Belmont Shore in Aspen, that Mike Herkus was their captain, and he was well known, and he was an incredible player. But getting to play against him at that time was a big deal for me as well, and especially that game, I blocked one of his kicks, so pretty special moment for me just to be able to rub it in a little bit.
Yeah. Now, Alec, most players with a career as decorated as yours went overseas to play rugby. Yet you played for the Gentlemen of Aspen your entire career. Did you get any overseas offers, or did playing abroad just not appeal to you? Why'd you stay with Aspen?
Oh, man. Well, I guess I am a little bit of a mountain kid, you know. This is always home, small mining town. My family is involved with the mining part of it and the history. But I did entertain several contracts. There was offers in Japan, France. Beej was going to set me up. The one I took most seriously was with Beej, Brian Going. He led me to believe that I'd have to start out at his club level, but had true belief that I'd make the NPC sides and move on to there. And then, which this is an outlandish thing to say, but the Super 12s at the time, and at that time there hadn't been an American on a team that was playing for Super 12. And so to give that hope to me was like, okay, that's where I want to go. The money wise, France and Japan was big money, but the training was ridiculous. And we had to get there like 5 or 6 months before the season to start training. And that kind of was like, man, I only have a certain amount of miles left in me, and to spend that much time training was out of the question for me. But I did. The France one got me to get a British passport because my mom was British, and so I did that route so I wouldn't be considered a foreigner, and there was more pay in that. But in the end, I didn't get that in time, and I think just who I was, it was the right thing for me to stay here and, you know, start my family, and which I did. And so there was that whole aspect of moving a whole, not just me, but my wife at the time, and what would have been my son. So
Right.
Yeah, so decided to stay home and continue to play with Aspen.
Well, before we leave Aspen, I think we should mention the Aspen Ruggerfest tournament, one of the great tournaments in the U.S., still being held annually. You and your wife, Mindy, help out at the tournament every year. But when you were playing, you were on plenty of Ruggerfest title teams. Is there one Ruggerfest title that stands out amongst the rest?
That'd be a tough one to answer. I mean, it's a great venue, right? And being a hometown kid, the mining aspect of our town, and I just remember the circles before Ruggerfest, your team. We go to Pepke Park, and just being the new guy early on and saying, this is our hometown kid. Like, he grew up here, and I get to play for this team. That aspect of them bringing that up each time is monumentous for me. To pick one out would probably be impossible, and if it was, it might be the losses. I know we lost to the Barbos once. It was just devastating. You you don't get your home crowd and then and want to bring home a loss, you know. So I would say probably the more painful ones being the losses, but man, just having the opportunity to play at Wagner Field in front of people you know and that know you it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great venue. Love it there.
Yeah.
Always fun. Now, Alec, you touched on it earlier. You found success in the sport fairly early. How long a period of time was it from being introduced to the sport to you being selected for the Western Mustangs?
Again, that'd be hard to remember. I know all this happened in my first summer, so I was trying to figure out how that happened because I must have just been in the right place at the right time. And like I said, I have a feeling there was some guys with maybe not pull, but some say, like a Mark Williams. And so it was all in that first summer from when I came home from football or college, just to get a job, just to make some money to go back to school. And next thing I know, I'm dropping out of college to go to Japan. And it was like, it all happened probably too fast. I'm not sure I'd have done that again. I wish, you know, I left my football team high and dry, which I've never, you know, forgotten. That part for me is I'm not that type of guy to leave somebody out there. And that was hard to make that decision to pursue rugby. Especially there's no guarantees that you're going to stay and it happened fast, and I'm glad it all happened the way it was, but I'm not sure I'd do it again that way.
Now, within a year, according to our records, you made your debut against Hong Kong in 1996. Where was that game, and what memories? Do you have any memories from that game?
Yeah, that was my first go. It was Hong Kong and Japan, and it was in Hong Kong, and I forget that big stadium, but it's where they have the Hong Kong Sevens, and so back in those days, we had the cotton jerseys, as you would remember, with the sleeves, and Hong Kong is like 90 degrees and 100% humidity, and I just remember how those jerseys started off okay, but they ended up being about 2 feet longer than when you first put them on, and about 20 pounds heavier. And a lot of guys cut their sleeves off. Brian Hightower, he probably cut his off a little too short to show off his guns a little bit. But you know, and then obviously I remember losing. I think we lost both those games, and Jack was not happy. The locker room scene after, and I'm brand new, and it was, you know, something you don't want to make a habit out of for sure. But just, I guess, as far as the memory of just how ridiculously hot it was, and I was glad I was in shape for sure, because it was brutal over there.
Yeah. Like you had one of the longest Eagles careers on record, as your last test was against Uruguay in 2009. An incredible 14 years wearing the Eagles jersey. Congratulations on that, as well as a big thank you for all you've done. My Eagle career was about half that long, and I know how hard it is to keep fit, both mentally and physically. How were you able to stay on top of the game for such a long period of time?
Man, I'm not sure I was ever on top of the game. I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I certainly didn't want to be the weak link again, where I wanted to show up in shape. And being here in Aspen, you start off, it's at 8,000 feet. So no matter what hill you go up, you're going up. And both when I lived in Aspen and then now down here in Basalt, I got these hills right outside that are, you can get 2,000 feet of elevation in a hurry. And so, along with framing, like I framed houses when I first started playing rugby. And then obviously about halfway through, I moved down here on Salty's place and started ranching for him. It's physical work anyway. And and all I really needed to do, I ended up being a lot lighter than I should have, because I focused more on the fitness side than the weightlifting side. And so almost everything I would do would be, either running straight uphill, and then up here also, the whole interval training thing was coming around. And so the hills we have had flat spots in them, and then they got super steep. So without knowing it, that type of training was coming in anyway. And so, when you got to camp, it was the beep tests and all the fitness stuff. Not that it was easy, but it wasn't running up the hill. And so just my location worked out as far as fitness for me.
Fantastic. Now, during your 14-year Eagle career, you played in 57 test matches. Were there 2 or 3 that stand out above the rest in your memory banks?
Like I said, it would be hard to. I mean, there was that time was a roller coaster, right? A lot of coaches. Had a few different coaches, and then revolving team type of thing where you'd look around and there was new faces and old faces were gone, and it would be. I mean, you remember more of your teammates than I would a match, except that 07 World Cup. My 50th cap, I believe it was, against South Africa, stands out. My kid got to go to that game. My dad and my mom were both in France for that, which is, a feat, because I think my dad had to go get a passport, hadn't been out of the country for probably 30 years. And so just to have my family there in France was, that was probably the most amazing moment. I mean, there's obviously others. I had some personal stuff go on and ended up with full custody of my kid. And then having full custody after representing myself to do this, I realized I was going to have to quit rugby, because now I have to get my kid to school and be a full-time dad. And somewhere in all of that, the team and the coaches decided that it was more important to have me than let me stay behind. So my kid toured with us for quite a bit there in the end. So I'm sure it was a team decision, because obviously the players had to be on board with having a 7-year-old kid running around the hotel. And so that meant to mean enough to your teammates for that to happen was probably as memorable as any test match I could tell you about.
Fantastic. Now, you played in 3 World Cups. You mentioned the 2007. You also played in the 1999 and 2003. Was the 2007 your favorite of those?
Oh, man.
Or which one was your favorite? I guess I should reword it.
That's a good question, too. I mean, Ireland was amazing. I was fairly new, 3 years in, and getting to play at Lansdowne, which you learn some of the history behind that. And I'm pretty sure the U.S. was the only team to score against Australia.
That's right.
That year, that World Cup, and so that is a pretty big feat and memorable. But I'd probably, in Australia that was amazing too. I mean, I guess just getting to be on a World Cup squad 6 straight weeks with your team, and then in that bigger atmosphere. I don't know if I could pick one. If I had to, just because my family was at 07, I'd go that route.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, one of the most famous Eagle tries ever occurred in that 2007 Rugby World Cup. Takadzwa Ngwenya outpaced South Africa's Brian Habana, and you had a hand in that try. I was at that game, but can't remember any details about it. What is your memory of that try and your role in it?
Oh, man. Ngwenya.
That's right. Z.
What a champion. I just remember it wasn't going well for us. I can say that. I mean, They were about to score on us again, and Todd out of nowhere picks off one of their long passes, and I remember thinking, you got to get there because he's going to need help. And he had that massive stiff arm that set him free for a little while, held off long enough to get me there. And I remember thinking, as soon as I got the ball, I'm not going to make it. There's too much left. And Herkus, sure enough, right away, he's calling for the ball. And my thought is, I got to get rid of this thing, give it to somebody who's got better chances than I do of making a mark. And then he threw that huge rainbow pass out to Z. And that, man, watching him go around Habana and just knowing Z, what a good dude he was and how humble he was. And I'm certain he got contract offers. And it changed, I believe it changed the course of his career and his life. And what a deserving dude. I mean, just a humble guy, great guy to be around. And for his career to just take off within an instant was, man, I'm glad I got to be a part of it,
That's cool. That's special. Now, Alec, of all your rugby tours over the years, Eagles or otherwise, what was your favorite and what made that tour so special?
Well, that's a good question too. Like you couldn't pin it down to one, I guess on a personal note, when my kids started coming with us, that was amazing. I mean, it was tough, right? You got this little kid, we called him the mascot, but everyone would throw him around the pool during training. And it was, there was a couple there was Sean Pittman, I think, was teaching him how to knock on the hotel doors and run away. That was a bad deal. And I found out about it. And it was like during a dinner I found out. And man, I unleashed on him. He was one of the new young kids. And by that time I was one of the older guys, if not the oldest guy. And so you could hear the whole place went silent and everyone put their silverware down, and it was like, uh-oh, Parker's pissed. And I laid into him, and a few of the the other rugby guys doing the same thing with phone, having them dial people's rooms and hang up. And it was just like, man,
I would be here, guys.
Yeah, it's time to grow up, man. I thought my kid was the one that was going to be the immature guys, but it's all part of the thing. We grew. I mean, those tours with my kid, got to Uruguay and other places, but it was, I think, just looking back on that, having this young kid with us that was part of the team by that point, that just meant so much to me, being able to, I don't think that would happen now. And
who was the Eagle coach then? Was it Jack or Tommy, or who was it?
That was Peter Thorburn.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So, and yeah, that's the other thing. I went through a handful of coaches. Eddie O'Sullivan was in the mix in the 90s as a forwards coach, and so fast forward to when he showed up at the end. It was I think I was the only guy on the team left that knew him from then. And so, and I don't know if that helped me, actually. I thought it would. Maybe I tried to use it to my advantage too much, but in the end, I could tell they're, like you said, I guess I didn't play after 2009, but I was certainly on the team in 2011 up till 2000, the World Cup, which is when I got cut, right before the Churchill Cup. And I definitely was in a role bringing Hayden Smith up and Johnny Van der Giesen. And these guys were just obviously younger, faster, bigger than I was. And I knew I kind of figured out my role is to mentor these guys in any way I could, it'd be hard to pick a tour out. It'd be hard to pick a time out that was my favorite. I mean, that was a big chunk of my life. And not that it was all rainbows and fairy dust, but it was, it's a big chunk of who I am now.
Sure.
So just getting the opportunity to be there on that team, I feel blessed to have been part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, Alec, you wouldn't have had a 14-year Eagles career if you didn't have a special place in your heart for the red, white, and blue. You're no longer wearing the Eagles jersey, but you're still volunteering your time for a patriotic cause. Tell me about what you, Mindy, and Bailey, your son, are doing for our disabled veterans.
Yeah. So this started, I guess I would have been in high school when my dad, the DAV, so it's a government-run organization through the DAV, but they bring up 400 plus vets to Snowmass Village every year for what they call the winter sports clinic. And so they'll have skiing, snowmobiling, fishing. They used to have the shooting sports, hockey. Anyway, they have a whole bunch of events they get to go do. Initially, my involvement was forced through my father, made me go pick up ramps. We'd have to drop off and deliver these ramps to get them off the buses into buildings. And then you have to build these plywood ramps to go out onto the ski slope so they can wheel out, get into their chairs, their ski chairs, and leave the slope from there. So initially it was like, you're doing this and you don't talk back to your father, so you're doing it. And over the years, behind the scenes, not ever getting to meet the guys, these vets, I didn't really understand. I didn't get the whole picture, of what this event was about. And then I met my wife, and she came up and she volunteered at the airport. And basically through that, she goes, "You got to come see this." And so I went to the airport to help in that fashion. So getting them out of their seats and into chairs and off the planes. But you get to meet them, you get to see them and talk to them. And that changed my life. Just seeing these guys that are ambulatory or quadriplegic, paraplegics, 90-something% of them are just incredibly happy. And I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I had ever felt sorry for myself once. I felt bad that here's these guys, missing parts of their body, but they have a better attitude than I do about life. And so from that moment forward, it was like, how can we make it better? How do we improve this? And so then Salty bought this ranch down here. And at the time, they had lost fishing on the river. They had lost their shooting sports. And so we got together with some higher ups in the DAV and got them fishing back and archery back. And we poured concrete down here around the pond so they could easily get to the water. And, it's just a highlight of my life, of my year, every year, that we look forward to these 400 plus guys that have given up so much for us, and to be able to give back a tiny bit it's everything, man.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And Mindy as well. Back to rugby a little bit, Alec, as we get to wrapping up this questions here. Of all your rugby memories and accomplishments, is there one or two that stand above the rest? You got a lot of them.
Oh, I mean, obviously World Cups are the pinnacle. Playing for Aspen and not losing a whole lot. Like I said earlier, playing for Aspen High School, losing was kind of a part of the game, right? And so I will say one thing about me, I can't stand losing. I think that's went into the fitness part. It went into my training thoughts. It went into the way I treat my teammates. And I believe the way I got treated in return was, you put in the hard work, it's not, I guess oddly enough, I didn't come from a sport thing. I didn't know about rugby. I didn't go to Cal, right? There's that avenue of the rugby colleges, and just being fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. You don't want to mess that up with something you can control. And so hard work kept me on that team. I hope a little bit of heart, and being a good teammate. But I think that whole part of my life, brother, it'd be impossible for me to pick one. I could pick teammates out. These are lifelong. I still talk to a handful of guys, and I don't have friends that I talk to all the time. You know what I mean? But you keep in touch with these guys. They become family. So just being blessed enough to be in the game of rugby is probably the biggest chunk of, I think it kind of makes you who you are and what you stand for and how you hold yourself. Rugby became, that's what it became, a party. And so hopefully, if I left something behind, I hope it's that playing for the United States of America, one, you get to, you don't have to, you get to play for the United States of America was, obviously the highlight of my life, right? I could say having a kid or something, but oh man, he's been challenging. So I'll pick rugby for now.
So, Alec, one last question. What does it mean to you to be inducted in the U.S. Rugby Hall of Fame?
That's it. I would just say, just to even be considered is amazing. And so for somebody to nominate me and think that I'm worthy after knowing all the guys that we got to play with, like I could pick 20 guys that I feel probably deserve it a lot more than I do. And so just to be considered it's amazing to me. Like, and I don't know if there was vindication or of all the hard work you put in and the hardships. Like, it's not easy to play for the US, and at times it was, financially almost impossible. And to be in a league of guys that are in the Hall of Fame, like you look at your Dan Lyles and Tom Billups, and it's just to be considered to be a part of that group it means everything, brother. It means a lot to me.
Well, fully deserved, Alec. I mean, not many people can say they've been in 3 World Cups. Very few, if any, can say they've played for the U.S. team for 14 years, 57 test matches, 7 national championships with your club. Very, very well deserved, Alec. Congratulations on your honor. And I look forward to congratulating you in person in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, man. Me too. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Thanks for your time today. I mean, the U.S. Rugby Foundation appreciates you being on board for this. And again, we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, buddy. Well, folks, that's going to do it for this edition of our With You Rugby podcast. For more information about the U.S. Rugby Foundation, go to our website at usrugbyfoundation.org. For more information about the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which will take place at the historic Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, July 13th. Go to our homepage and look for Hall of Fame in the top right corner and click on that. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.